Okay. It's just me talking because I haven't heard words from you guys yet. Okay. A few people took the practice quiz and got all of the questions right the first time. Uh, they may have taken longer to do that, but that's great. Some people, I think the most common thing was to find that people got 3 wrong, but other people probably missed more. Take it again, get the ones wrong right, and not just to punch the right radio button, but to know why you got it wrong. Okay, if you don't know the words, for instance, syndesmosis, synchondrosis, amphiarthrotic, things like that we heard on last week. I think that was on Thursday, and the material we did on Tuesday. You should count yourself well behind. You need to keep up. Okay, I'm lecturing now, pontificating, whatever the word is. I just have to get it out of the way. It's easier to do this at the start of a class than uh, start growling at the end of the class. People never take that. You've got to keep up. Okay. Now, those 2 little lectures, I call them little lectures, had a lot of new words in it. That's true. But that's not really considered a lot of material, especially if you spent any time on it over the weekend. Okay. Anybody have any suggestions for the good of the group as to how to approach the material or how they did it? I also got some outlines turned in. Call that early because it's not due any outline, and so far it's 1 and 6. They're not due until the 14th of September, the day of the first practical examination. Okay? But if you want to get them off your computer, get them out of your way, well, just send them to me and I'll collect them. I'll always give you an acknowledgement that I got it. If you don't get the acknowledgement back, and it just simply says, got it, thanks, Charlie. Okay. And if you don't get the acknowledgement back, I didn't get it, or somehow I missed it, you need to write me in a day and say, hey, did you get my outline? Okay. Do not, please, do not send me anything ever, ever, ever using Canvas inbox. It used to work, but it's something I consider horrible. It doesn't work all the time. It doesn't send it to me. It tells me to stop whatever I'm doing, and I have things to do too, like you do, and go to Canvas because somebody sent me one thing, and I have to go there to get it. Okay, and then I can't save it. Okay, I mean I can keep it there, but I can't put it in a folder. Uh, please, uh, don't send me anything in Canvas inbox. How do you send it to me? There's an email attached. That's the best way. Okay. Let's see. 35. Right. And everybody's got their camera on, so that's good. Okay, now here's the part where I had trouble on Thursday. Connecting up the way I have always connected up. So let's see if I get any trouble. If I do, well, just be patient, but I don't think we have any more trouble. Okay, are you with me at week 2? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Week 2, week 1 assignment was chapters 1 and 6 to be outlined. I didn't complete going with you over the book, chapter 6. I went about 2/3 of the way through. I did do number 1, but I don't really think we need to complete it here because I have sent you copies of acceptable outlines. So you know, if you look at the one for chapter 6, what was expected. Okay. If anybody still does not have a book and is unable to outline, make contact with one of the other students in the class. How do you do that? Through the chat button. Can anybody help me? What you want, possibly if you don't have the book, is for them either to send you photos of the relevant pages. That could be time consuming and they may not want to do it. Or if somebody, one time only, is willing to give up their outline to you, you will be expected to acknowledge that the outline is being received by student X, and then you're to rework the outline. That could be hard, to rework an outline that is already in good shape. Okay, but that's only if you don't have a book right now. Okay, then when you have reworked the outline, you send it in to me, giving credit to where the outline came from. Okay, and it must be substantially different. Okay, I think the easiest thing is to have a copy of the book. Okay, for this week, it's chapter 9. Okay. And we actually did part of chapter 9 last Thursday, and we'll finish it up today. And that's it. It's due by P1. P1 is September 14. For week 2 discussion, that does not mean discussion class. That just means for this class. Everybody's assigned this. Almost everybody's enrolled in the discussion class. And we'll be using that early next week. Okay. The week 2 discussion, last week you had meet and greet. Okay. This one I would like by Friday, the 3rd. So even after Thursday's class, you got Friday. Everybody, doesn't it seem the case? Everybody always thinks you have all the time in the world to do everything, you know? No, I know that's not the case. So telling you ahead of time to try to manage your time here. And what you're going to try to do here is compose a practice question yourself. You've seen a practice exam. I want you to design a question similar to those on the exam over any of the material that we will have covered through Thursday. Now, the questions on the practice exam, they were all text-based. But some people answering this assignment last semester inserted, instead, for lab, they inserted images of bones or skeletons or skulls that they took from the internet, which is absolutely fine. Take it from anywhere you want. And then they ask questions about the picture. Okay. Sometimes they were adept enough to be able to put in an arrow. Sometimes they were lucky enough to find a picture that had something marked or with an arrow already. And then they could compose their question. but it doesn't have to have an image in it. It just needs to be a straightforward question. Okay, so for instance, what kind of a bone is the parietal bone? The four answers that I'm going to select are: it's an irregular bone, a long bone, a short bone, or a flat bone. And the answer would be a flat bone. Okay? And that's all you really need to do to construct a question. Okay? Take it out of our notes, take it out of the book. I mentioned about tricky questions. Okay, I don't do tricky questions on the test, at least I hope not. If there's anything that's close to it, people tell me immediately. But if you want to compose a humorous or tricky question for this practice test, that's fine. Okay, most of you will give straightforward questions, I'm sure. Okay, you come down to the word reply, stick in your question right here, and then post it. Okay, here we are at 8:31 for the lecture on ossification. Ossification. Okay.
Charlie, I have a quick question.
Sure.
So I apologize if I missed this, if you just said this. The question that we're posting, is that I'm confused. Is it from what chapters 1 or 6, or is it from this week's lecture?
No, it's all the way from the start of the class. We just started.
Okay.
Okay, from last Tuesday, last Thursday, this Tuesday, or this Thursday.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so it's anything at all in there. And if it's a hard question, so be it. Okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to have a hard question, harder than the ones that I've shown you on the practice. The practice is the level that you're going to be asked questions at, though.
Okay, thank you.
Charlie, I have a question. It has to be multiple choice question.
It's all going to be multiple choice.
It has to be.
Huh?
It has to be multiple choice.
It is going to be multiple choice.
Okay.
What would you want in preference to multiple choice? Anything else that I could think of would be more confusing. For instance, I have instructors that work with me. They do a fill-in, and you have to write in the word. But if you forget to capitalize it, you miss the question. If you misspell it slightly, like for instance, epiphyseal plate, if you say epiphyseal plate or something like that, I would have given you credit on multiple choice. You wouldn't have to worry because it'll be right in front of you. But if you misspell it slightly, it's going to be marked wrong. If you are typing and again, you want to write epiphyseal and you put E, and then for some reason you hit a space and then you have physio, epiphyseal. So you have a space after the E, accidental, everything else spelled properly, it's going to be marked wrong. I don't like that. So is multiple choice okay with most of you?
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay. I try to be fair. Fair is the one, you know, it can be a good trait, but it can be a fault. I was born wanting to be fair. I was born wanting justice. That's not quite the same thing. Fair, giving everybody an equal chance, not tricky or anything like that. But justice is something else. It's similar. If somebody messes with me, does something wrong, does something bad to me as a kid, I would think anyway, I want justice. Were you like that? If some kid threw a rock at you and hit you in the back of the head, you want justice?
Yep.
You're going to run away. Well, some people would run away. That's fine, but I have to have justice. And justice to me is not getting even; it is getting ahead. So throughout this course, I'll treat you as nicely as I can, and as nicely as you treat me, of course. But you don't have to treat me nice. You just have to be fair. That's what I have to do, is be fair to all of you. I'll tell you a situation once. I was an adult at probably about 30 years old. I lived out in Majeska Canyon. Some of you know where that is. It's 8 miles outside of El Toro. When I lived there, it was 30 years ago. No, it was 40 years ago. And it was very rustic. Lots of trees, one little road. And you would drive out there from El Toro and almost never see a soul. 8 miles from El Toro, 4 miles down the little road at night, there would be one light at a bend, which was very dangerous otherwise. So they put that light out there. And then I'd go home, and my house was, like a cabin. And I loved it. I went home one night, and I couldn't sleep because I had bought a new pickup truck that day. I bought a brand new, well, I purchased 7 pickup trucks in my life, but every one gives you a thrill. So I had this brand new, in this case, Toyota pickup truck. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, dark as it could be out there, I decided that I want to go for a ride. I want to go for a ride in my new truck. So I got into the darn thing and headed off back to El Toro. Destination going to be the all-night Alpha Beta market that was there. And I was enjoying it. The moon was full, so I turned off my lights, and it was just great. And then I got to the 4-mile marker where there's a lamp, as I said, because it's a bad curve. And I could see there was a car, an old junker car. And it had been relieved of one of its wheels and tire and lifted upon some rocks on the axle. So it was jacked up on rocks. And I'm looking at this old car, and we all have our, I won't even say it. We all have our feelings about things. And I looked at this junker car and I thought, in the moonlight, I said, that car is from Arizona. I know it. That car's from Arizona. I didn't particularly like Arizonans in those days. It's gotten better since. I pull up to the car, and as I get close enough, my headlights allow me to see the license plate, and it says Grand Canyon State. That's Arizona. I knew it. I knew it was an Arizona car. That's where all the junker cars go or come from. I turned the bend there, the sharp curve in the road, and here were the 2 guys whose car this must have been. Obviously, because they had the tire in the wheel holding it up on the road, and they were standing hitchhiking. 1 o'clock in the morning. If I don't pick them up, who is going to pick them up? But I looked at these 2 guys from Arizona, and it reminded me of the movie California with Brad Pitt. I know you never saw that one, but he was freaky, scary. These 2 guys standing on the roadside, wanting a ride from me at 1 in the morning, were the most psychotic looking people I had ever seen. I mean, not just grungy and long hair and stuff like that. And I looked like that too at times, but you wouldn't want to get anywhere near them. And as I said, they were hitchhiking with their fist and thumb up, you know. Now, what would you do? Would you have stopped and tried to give them a ride or a hand? Or would you just keep going?
Depends how big they were.
I've seen some pretty nasty little guys.
That's true.
So I'm telling you, really, they look like right out of a horror movie. Would you have stopped? Honestly, at 1 o'clock in the morning, you by yourself?
No way.
Anybody else?
No.
No.
Okay, who would have stopped? Probably wouldn't be here if it did. I don't know. I back and forth that I said to myself, oh, go ahead and stop. Be brave. Be brave. Come on. Take a chance. Take a chance. I said, then my other self would say, don't be foolish. Don't be foolish. That's stupid. That's stupid. You know, they got a wheel and I got a new truck. They probably want to make a trade. Oh, God. And I didn't know whether to stop or not. I can't believe I couldn't decide that instantly. I got up to them and I was still moving. And I decided to stop. I actually decided to stop. Can't believe it. I started to put my foot on the brakes, but they had already decided that I was going on. And then going on, that wasn't going to help them. So they took their hands, opened their fists, and they had rocks inside already, and they just pelleted my car. Now should I stop and teach them a lesson? Would you?
Definitely no.
You'll get through this faster if you give me an answer real quick.
Oh, yeah, no, not at all, Charlie, no.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely not nowadays.
Okay.
Even during the day, I wouldn't have not stopped.
Now this is 1:15 now at night or something.
No.
So and there's nobody on the road but the three of us, those two and me, and one brand new truck and one worn out tire and one pathetic car. So I kept going, and I felt like such a coward. I felt like, how come I can't defend myself or take on these two guys? You know, I should have studied martial arts or something. So I got all the way into El Toro, went to the Alphabeta store. Don't know what I bought. I was so upset. Come out, and I turned to go back home. And across the street, there the two guys are, rolling that lopsided tire. Somebody with probably a very old pickup truck that they didn't want probably gave them a ride, and I hope lived through it. They were rolling this wheel down to the AM PM market, which was the only place they could be going. They had about another mile to go. Well, I turned and they saw me, and they gave me the one finger salute, if you know what I'm talking about. And I returned that, but it didn't feel like justice. It wasn't justice. You know, they hit my car with these rocks. Fortunately, actually, the paint held up. And I kept on going back home. 4 miles in, I'm back at the car. 4 miles in, I'm back at the light. 4 miles in, I'm back at my frustration and my anger and looking at this damn thing. And then I got justice. I pulled over in the middle of the night, now about 2 o'clock, and I let the air out of all 3 of the remaining tires that they had and took off. So I wish I could have been there when they got back. They know who done it. Anyway, that's,
I wish I could have seen their faces too.
to me, that's an example of justice. I'll tell you some more later. Let's get on with this lecture. Okay, there's two types of ossification. Ossification is the formation of bone. When something forms, it doesn't form out of nothing. Okay, maybe the universe did eventually, or, you know, but we're not looking at that. Bone usually forms out of membranes, or it forms out of cartilage, especially cartilage. Ossification is the gradual transition from a fibrous or cartilaginous template to bone. Now, if you're not familiar with the word template, I know you've used them all your life. Anything that's a guide or a model. If you ever had letters of the alphabet stencil, where you could take a pencil and, you know, do the outlines of the letters, that's a template. A template is a guide on how to do something. So the ossification is the formation of bone from either a fibrous template, we'll see what that is, or a cartilaginous template. This ossification or bone formation takes place at different rates throughout your body. Different bones fully ossify at different ages. If you remember the epiphyseal plate that I talked to you about the other day, it's one of the last things to ossify in a long bone. So even if we're looking at just one bone, different parts of the bone can ossify or become bony at different times. The less common type of ossification is intramembranous ossification. Now, you may find it sometimes incorrectly spelled intermembranous. It's not, it's intramembranous ossification. This is the formation of bone inside of membranes. Bone formed from this type of ossification is usually what we call spongy bone. And it usually is porous. You'll see pictures in a moment. It's limited primarily to the flat bones of the skull. The flat bones of the skull are the parietal. The squamous portion of the temporal bone is flat. Parts of the maxilla are flat. Okay. It doesn't say it here, but the underside of the occipital bone is also flat. And a really good example of a flat bone is your sternum or breastbone. Okay. The sternum is probably the best illustration of a flat bone. The parietal bone, top back or top rear or posterior of your skull, you have two, one on each side, is sort of a cup shape. Sort of like if we took a coconut and a machete, cut the coconut, not quite through the center, and hollowed it out, we end up with a little bowl. Okay. That would be the shape, but it's still considered a flat bone. The frontal bone is also considered mostly a flat bone. Well, if you think of your forehead, it's flat. It's fairly flat anyway, from front to back. The mandible, the body of the mandible is flat. I know it's curved, but it's also considered to be flat. And the clavicles, which we'll get into on Thursday, This is not a good drawing or image. I searched for an extra half hour just before class looking for a better image though, and I didn't find it. So when I do, I'll exchange it out. In intramembranous ossification, we're going to have the formation of flat bones or flat portions of bones. Here, the temporal bone on the side of this infant. Here is a portion of the occipital bone at the back. And here they show also a little piece of the body of the mandible. Okay. The bone forming cells are these that look like blotches in the center. They're called osteoblast, osteobone blast forming. Osteoblast, the B in osteoblast, to me reminds me of building. There's also a bone destroying cell, an osteoclast. But here we're looking at ossification, bone formation. We don't expect to see osteoclasts around. These osteoblasts are embedded in a matrix. It's a fibrous matrix. Okay. Collagen in this case, and they grow. They skip right past the next one, we're calcifying, and then we end up with this sort of situation. We have a membrane at the top left, and we have a membrane at the bottom. Okay. These may eventually join if it comes towards you or away from you enough, but in cross-section like this, well, the membranes look at the top and the bottom. And the newly formed bone is called spongy bone with chambers inside of it called trabeculae. We'll be using that term a lot later on. And then finally, when it's finished forming, here we go. Now, if you took a parietal bone off of the skull and you cut it and looked at it from the edge, this is what you'd see. Spongy bone inside, but a little bit of compact bone outside, which we haven't accounted for yet. We will. Spongy bone is also known as cancellous bone. Okay. The other type of ossification is endochondral ossification. Endochondral ossification is the more common type, much more common than the formation of spongy bone through intramembranous ossification. We'll read this together. In this type of bone formation, a cartilage template is surrounded by something called the perichondria. I'm going to show you that in just a second. The cartilage template is entered by blood vessels, and this begins the process of ossification. As the blood enters, it brings calcium, nutrients, and the template of cartilage begins to grow. And then ossification of the cartilage takes place. I'm going to skip the other portion of the paragraph and come back to it. It's a little too early. Okay, let's look at the diagram. Here's our template. Well, where is this template? If we were to take an x-ray of a pregnant woman, which we normally don't, but sometimes we have to, we get an x-ray of the developing fetus. And you can see its arms and its fingers. And this may be the humerus. Actually, it's meant to be the femur, okay? But it doesn't look like a femur, not yet. It's way too small. This is the cartilaginous model that forms. This is the precursor of the bone. It is surrounded by the perichondrium. This picture doesn't label perichondrium. Para means around. Con means cartilage. Around the cartilage. So if this was some sort of fruit and I could peel the very outside little layer off of it, that's the perichondrium. Once the model, the cartilaginous model or template, begins to grow, begins to calcify. As soon as it starts to grow, we rename the perichondrium. What was perichondrium over here and hasn't really changed, still is renamed. So the outside here now is a round developing bone, even though it's quite small. This is the periosteum. The perichondrium became the periosteum. When you were little, did you have a nickname? And then as you grew up, you assumed your current name? Mikey could become a Michael. My sister couldn't pronounce my name. My sister can hardly pronounce anything now. But my sister used to call me Lully because she couldn't say Charles. Then it became Charles, and then it became Charlie. Okay, the developing bone now. It's developing because it's getting some blood supplied, but we need the blood to go deeper inside. The bone is going to get larger, and a blood vessel will enter in. Once that happens, we still have the periosteum. The periosteum is going to be from now on. The bone is always surrounded by the periosteum. The only time we have perichondrium is before ossification begins. In the center of a bone, the first part that ossifies just a little bit is called the primary ossification center. The tips will ossify later. And here they have here. And this is now a secondary ossification center. Bone, primary ossification center, bone, another secondary ossification center, and this one is another secondary ossification center. Okay. You're used to finding bones that have a hollow center once they've dried out. That's called the medullary cavity. That's where all our red, white blood cells are formed, and quite a few other cells that you may not have heard of are formed in there. This is the secondary ossification center. This is the secondary ossification center. And this is still the primary ossification center. the bone gets bigger. Okay. So we're able to see it a little bit better. Now, between the secondary ossification center down here and the primary ossification center all here, there's an area of cartilage still that has not ossified. If it ossifies, the bone is stuck at the stage it's at. It can't grow anymore. So this stays as the epiphyseal plate until the bone has reached full size. The epiphyseal plate is a synchondrosis. You'll need to make that association test time. Here's compact bone on the outside being formed by the endochondral ossification. Here's the medullary cavity. And we have epiphyseal plates here and here, separating the two proximal secondary ossification centers from the main ossification center. Okay, now this bone is being shown as though it were full grown. Obviously, this is not proportion. This little template would have to grow much, much larger to form this structure. So it's reduced in size just for illustration. Here's our femur. Here's the head of the femur, and it's got some articular cartilage on it. Well, we know we need cartilage on the head of the femur to articulate with the pelvic area and not damage things. Down at the lower end, we have articular cartilage also to protect. Spongy bone here in the secondary ossification center, spongy bone here, compact bone here. I think I have it in a drawing to show you in a moment, but take the mature bone. And this is a long bone, obviously. This area where the primary ossification center developed, this is called the diaphysis. The diaphysis, the shaft of the bone. Whereas up here, where the secondary ossification center is, and down here where the secondary ossification center is, this is called the epiphysis. Diaphysis in the center, and we have two epiphyses counting both ends. The epiphyses give rise to the name epiphyseal plate, which is the growing point in lengthening a bone. I'll go back up and see that we have covered some of this. The template of cartilage grows. Ossification begins in the central portion of the template, okay, which will become the diaphysis. Okay. The central portion of the template is also known as the primary ossification center. But the bone itself, the entire bone, at that point in the center is the diaphysis. The extremities of the template each develop ossification centers. They're called secondary ossification centers. And these are located in the epiphyses, proximal and distal both ends of the bone. Once the template has begun to grow, The perichondria is forever referred to as the periosteum. Here it mentions what I just did about the epiphyseal plate. This is an example of synchondrosis, a cartilaginous immovable joint. The final ossification of the epiphyseal plates takes place gradually and is completed at different chronological ages. Some epiphyseal plates never solidify and remain for life.
Like which ones?
You know, most of those are in the fingers. They're in the fingers, and unfortunately, you think, well, does that mean my fingers are going to get longer and longer and longer? No, they don't. But for some people, it develops into bony tissue, and we have arthritis. Okay. You don't have it yet, I'm sure, but you are going to find your joints and your fingers will enlarge laterally, in most cases anyway, most people.
Do you think it's true that cracking your knuckles makes your fingers curl laterally?
Yeah, that's what did it to me, huh? No, I don't. You know why? Because I crack my knuckles, I love doing it, and I only have the widening in the index finger between the distal two phalanges, distal two bones of the index finger. I don't have it anywhere else.
Okay.
Okay. Here I mentioned that the articulation with another bone is often capped by articular cartilage or an area of cartilage. This is always called articular surface or articular cartilage. I just showed it to you. It's our protection of one bone rubbing against another. In any one bone, you can have intramembranous and endochondral ossification occurring. Okay, that's okay. Usually we speak of a bone by the major type of ossification that it has. In the femur that we just looked at, there was spongy bone at the proximal and distal ends. The shaft or diaphysis was made from endochondral ossification. This type of bone is compact bone and has what we call the Haversian system. Okay, now Haversian system, that's just a map of the bone and a lot of names, and they're fortunately not very difficult. The Haversian system, which we're going to do right now, was named after a guy named Haver. And he came up with it. He showed everybody else that it was around. He deserves the credit, but there's a move on in anatomy anyway to eliminate, eradicate anybody's name. I think some of these names will hang around forever. They're just too ingrained in us. We've used it so long. The Haversian systems develop in compact bone. Think of a bone like a femur. Imagine taking a saw and cutting it across the very middle of the diaphysis, dried out bone. Okay, you can see the medullary cavity in the center and it seems more or less hollow if it's dried for any length of time. But as you put your finger into the channel, it's surrounded by compact bone. The portions of the compact bone that make up the aversion system are listed here, but we need to see them first. Here's the compact bone. Here's that femur you cut across just a moment ago. Here's the medullary cavity. Okay. And lining it can be a little bit of spongy bone. That's fine. The compact bone is from here to here, all the way around. Compact bone. This is referring to an osteon of compact bone. Osteon is the physiological unit of the skeletal system, and especially of compact bone. Well, let me increase that. It's pointing to the circular area here. Some it's drawn small, some it's drawn larger. And this one, the important one, has been telescoped out, as if you could pull it out like pulling out a straw from a box of straws. That's the osteon. Okay. In the center of the osteon is a channel going right through it. We also have, look, in a compact bone, we have a channel going through it. We don't want to be confused between the whole bone and this one osteon. What runs in the osteon is a little artery, arteriole, a venule, and probably a lymphatic. Needn't know that at this point. The very center is the very centers that I'm pointing to here. 1, 2, 3, 4. These dark centers are this one here. If I were to take those vessels out, that's the Haversian canal. Haversian canal. So we've got two things out of the way, I hope. We've got an osteon. We haven't seen all of its components yet. And we've got the Haversian canal. Here's the Haversian canal here in this section, going straight down. Over here, going straight down. They can also interconnect within the bone, so that a blood supply coming to the bone is distributed evenly. Bone gets blood all of the time. We don't sense that it moves very fast. It can't, but it's always coming in. And if blood moves slow, past a lot of cells that are dead, they won't be taking up the oxygen and other nutrients from it. Those will be distributed when they get to their final destination, and that'll be a living cell. This interconnection between two adjacent Haversian canals is called a Volkmann canal. Here's another Volkmann canal. There are other connections within the osteon, but I'm going to show you those in just a moment. I'm not going to use this diagram. I'm going to use this. This is an osteon model. It has a small arteriole, venule, and here's the lymphatic. Now, if you don't know what a lymphatic is, it's okay. Today, you certainly will soon. Okay. This is the haversian canal. Now, see, it's also called the central canal. People are opting to call it that, but I think more people are going to leave it as haversian canal. I certainly am. There's no guy named Central that discovered this. Haversian, Haver did. So here's the haversian canal. This is a mechanism or channels to distribute blood nutrients throughout the bone. The haversian canal is surrounded by bony tissue that's been layered. In this model, it's artificially shown in alternating colors. Those colors do not exist in reality, but they sure help you see the layering of one layer after another is put down. These are called lamella. The plural is lamellae with an AE at the end. This is a lamella. Within the lamella, between successive layers, are these pits. These pits are like little coffins. If you've ever been to the catacombs, they're exactly like that. These are called lacuna. And what's inside of every lacuna is, over here, an osteocyte. An osteocyte is sort of a neutral word for a bone building or a bone forming cell. The osteocyte that we see here could be an osteoblast and build more bone. It could also be an osteoclast and destroy bone. Why do we want to destroy bone? Well, we know during aging, maybe we'll get more frail and something like that. But the thing is, we are building and destroying bone all of the time. Right now, your skeleton is being destroyed daily and regenerated daily. It's not static, even though you may be full grown, it's not static. And in roughly 11 years, every bone in your body will have been replaced without us even knowing it. Okay? If you look at the femur, it takes 5 years to rebuild it and destroy it again. Okay, so this is called an osteocyte because in looking at it, we can't tell what it's doing. So if you don't know if it's an osteoblast or an osteoclast, call it an osteocyte. The osteocyte's the best term. Little blood vessel channels coming off here like tentacles off of a jellyfish. These are caniculi. Canal, I-C-U-L-I. Most people have the greatest difficulty spelling that word. You don't have to spell it though, because it's going to be multiple choice. But canal, that's easy. I-C-U is easy. And then L-I. Nothing else can go there. These channels radiate outward, inward, both, joining all of the lacuna and the osteocytes inside of them. Fortunately for them, osteocytes don't think. Otherwise, they'd realize they're trapped in that small lacuna for their entire life. They'll never move. We skipped this portion here, but I think we've covered it also at the same time. Reversion canals, major longitudinal, vascular passageways. Vascular meaning blood supply. The lamella, it's a circular layer of compact bone in the osteon. The lacuna, crypt-like depressions. This one is misspelled. I got to take my own medicine here. Canaliculi. These are small vascular channels extending from the lacuna. The osteocyte is the bone cell, and the Volkmann canal interconnect the Haversian canals. Okay, any questions? When you read through the chapter, that should help you solidify that stuff. If you still have questions, you're always welcome to bring them to the class. You're also welcome to email me if you get stuck or confused on anything. Any questions? Okay, let's take a break until 3:25, and then we're going to do the vertebral skeleton.
Charlie?
Yep.
I have a question. Do we have to memorize the pictures?
The picture.
Yeah.
If I skipped over something and didn't talk about it and said you'll get it later, not yet. No. Everything I went over, though, everything I took the time to mention, yes, you do have to.
Okay.
Uh,
Thank you.
I know you can do it. Every other class that I've had has had many people just ace that material. Okay, so okay, I'm gonna make it 3:30. Okay, got to keep an even time, and then I'll get right started. Okay, bye bye. Okay, we're back. Okay, anybody think of a question? Okay, I say this to every class and get it over with. When I ask if you have a question, you don't need to have a question, obviously, if you haven't got one. But I would be thinking between now and the reading assignment and everything else that you come across something that you're not clear about possibly. And if so, mark it down, write it down, and then be sure to ask. A lot of people want to ask by email, and that's fine. But if it can wait until it can be shared with the group, that might even be better. At some point in the future, everybody gets around to moving on. And a lot of people move on to go to PA school or they go to try to become a graduate for BSN and others for registered nurse and all sorts of fields. At some point, I get asked for letters of recommendation, which I'm very open to. I'll write the best recommendation letter I can for anybody who asks. But there's one part in every single recommendation, especially when you're applying through the major groups that collect reservations. They ask always what personality, they'll ask ability to get along with others. Those are easy to take care of. But then they always will ask, what is the student's oral communication skills? And if I haven't heard from anybody or somebody, let's put it that way, what am I supposed to write down? I'm going to write what it is, and so please try to get some oral communication in before the class is over. Got a long time. I'm not asking you to ask a question every day, because if you did, we'd be here to midnight every day, and we don't want or need that, I hope. Okay, but they asked me that in all honesty, and in all honesty, I have to give them an answer. Okay, let me go back to the share screen. Okay, put that down to size. Okay, again for today, 8:31. After the ossification lecture, we have bones and figures. Well, these are locations. This is meant to help you out. If you see this one, this is the one you want to either put on a separate screen or to copy. Even now you can copy it or download it and open it up. But this has lots and lots of terms and where to find them illustrated in our book in Marieb. Okay. If you don't have Marieb and have asked me, can this one be used? And I told you, yeah, but with difficulty. This is the difficulty. Okay. But if you do have this one available, and to yourself. And we're doing the pedicle. You can look at it at 720. Figure 720. The lamina, the vertebral foramen. There's a whole bunch right together. These first ones, figure 720. Then it'll skip to 21 and so on. Okay. When they changed the edition of the book, they scattered the page numbers, but they seem to have left the figures with the same numbers that they always had, which is great for us. I'm just going to show you where that is. And now we'll do the vertebra and ribs after. Okay, do you have enough screen to see that little calendar?
Yes.
Yes, we can see it.
Yep.
Okay. We'll go to next month here. Well, there's where we are. Is that green?
Yes.
Okay, I got one right. I can usually get the colors right if they're embedded in black, but side by side with red, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Okay, that's where we are today. And we're doing the vertebral bones. We'll start with the upper appendicular skeletal bones on Thursday. And then on the following Tuesday, a week from today, we'll do the lower appendicular skeletal bones. And on the 9th, okay, we'll continue on with lecture, of course, but on the 9th, as far as lab is concerned, there is nothing. There is nothing but review. Total time for you to review all of the bones. Okay. I know you actually have that time available to you at your house or at home, but I find people ask me so many questions that they must be getting some advantage from the review. Okay, and then the 14th is the day we take the practicum, practicum 1. Practicum 1, or the bone or skeletal practicum, is the easiest. You want to get your very highest score on it because nothing is as easy as this test. And you will be feeding off of the points that you get here, possibly towards another exam that you don't do quite as well on. Now, on the other hand, some people do well on everything, and I hope that's you. But you definitely want to get a high score. Did I quiz you? Not quiz, but did I ask you what you thought the average grade would be for the class on practicum 1, which is 100 questions on bones and bone structures, and they're to be named? Did I ask you that?
I don't think so.
Okay, I'm asking it then.
The average?
What do you think the grade is going to be for the class?
80.
85.
80 and 85.
95.
95.
That's a good average.
Oh yeah, might as well say 100, huh?
I like it.
I'm optimistic.
There you go.
Okay. It depends on the class, of course, and what expectations it seems I have for them. If I don't push a little bit where it's necessary or set the bar high, no one gets over it. Okay. And when you set the bar high, they get over it. Strange. I'm expecting a minimum average score of 93, and I don't imagine I'll get higher than 98. Okay. I have had when extra credit was that was tacked onto this test. You're getting extra credit for showing yourselves and still participating, and that'll be added onto the practicum. So actually, to tell you the truth, I expect our average will be over 100. Okay. Think so?
Yep.
I think so.
Charlie,
With
will
the-
you have a, will you do a discussion? You know how we signed up for the discussion class?
That's right, I will.
Okay, so you'll do that before the practicum?
I'll do it before the practice.
Awesome.
4 people have not signed up. That's their choice. But I cannot let them in, but they can watch a video
Hmm,
or something, I'll
Right.
have something for them. But especially for questions and answers and such, I'll have it before the practicum.
Awesome, thank you.
And I also probably will have one after the practicum for anybody who wants to go over the points. You'll see, however, that when I grade and somebody finds a bad question, kind of hard to find a bad question if I keep using a test. But if you find a question that is misleading, could have been answered 2 different ways, or maybe Canvas had it pegged wrong for the correct answer, that I change those grades immediately. I'm always in constant email during the test. You don't have to read the email, of course, at that point, but I read it afterwards, and I'll say, question 89, bad question. Everybody gets credit. Okay? How to be fair, how to have justice. Okay. This, I believe, is figure 720 if you have your book with you and want to mark it up or just look along. This is one of the vertebra. Okay. We have 7 cervical vertebra, not shown here. We have 12 vertebra that we call thoracic. That's this. This is a thoracic vertebra. This is the 6th thoracic vertebra. You do not have to number them yourself. Okay. But it's shown down here as T6. That means thoracic 6. Then you have 5 vertebrae in the small of your back. The largest vertebra, they're the lumbar. Then you have 1 sacrum and 1 coccygeal vertebra, total 24. Okay. Well, let's look at a typical vertebra. This one on the left is being looked at or viewed from the top. Okay, we're looking down upon it. This is the anterior portion, and here's the back or posterior portion. The spinous process is at the back. You've all seen somebody shirtless, probably, riding a bicycle, bent over the bicycle. And more on some people than others, the person may have had, especially if this person was thin, a bony back, look like a stegosaurus. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes,
Bumps on the back. Those bumps are the spinous process. Okay. Now, if you had the spinous process in your hand, it would be easier, I know, and that would be the real benefit of face-to-face lab. Okay. I'll be soon going over with you using actual skeleton bones. Slip a finger down into this trough and this trough. This is the lamina. Spread the 2 fingers wide here and here. This is the transverse process. They haven't labeled the transverse process here. They labeled it over here. At the end of the transverse process is a facet, and we'll simply call it facet. Okay. Transverse costal facet, that's one name for it, but here, a facet. This is going to be for the articulation of a rib. Back up. Spinous process, lamina, transverse process, and now pinch here and here. And we have the pedicle. And then around the pedicle, in front of it, quite large, is the body of the vertebra. The body. Sometimes it's called the centrum, but I will only use the word body. This makes for an interesting looking ring, but you could probably only get part of your little finger in through it. And the hole in the center is the vertebral foramen through which the spinal cord travels. Looking at it from the profile or lateral view, here's the body. Go backwards this time. We'll come back to this guy. Here's the pedicle. Here's the transverse process back here. This structure here is pedicle. Transverse process. You cannot see the lamina, but you can easily see the spinous process. In the spinous process of the thoracic vertebra, it's sharply angled downward, sort of like a coonskin cap or a Davy Crockett cap, if you know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, it's just sharply angled downward. This spot here is another facet. Why do we have two facets? And what is a facet? Facet means face. Facet is a point of articulation as well. Okay, if you know what a clutch is, maybe some of you, of course, don't, guys included, since all the cars these days seem to be automatic. Take two hands, push them together like you're praying, okay, and then turn one, forces the other to turn. Make your right hand the one that makes the turn. Now separate them. The right hand still wants to turn, but can't touch the left. So that would be a clutch. Well, these facets touch the rib. The head of the rib that we're going to see later in this lecture is here. It comes backwards to here and touches for stability at the tubercle of the rib, and then the rib swings forward. Come back to the superior view that's on the left. This structure sticks up. It's this structure here. And this is the superior articular process. And yes, it has a face on it or a facet, but I want superior articular process. It's superior because it's on the top, articular because it's going to articulate or joint with the vertebra that sits on top of it. This is the inferior articular process right here and over here. How does this down here join with this up here? Can't. But it can sit on top of another vertebra similar to it, and then these two would be able to sit on top of here. Superior and inferior articular processes. Now, we use this one as a typical vertebra. Typical. We use it because it has most of the features. Each type of vertebra has something different. Okay. So expect that. These are the top two vertebrae underneath your skull. The 7 vertebrae that are underneath your skull are the cervical vertebrae. So if you twist your head around, get some crackling maybe going, those are the cervical vertebrae. The first one is C1, cervical 1, but it has a nickname that you need to know, the atlas. It sits under your skull, and these sort of smooth fossa articulate with the occipital condyles that we saw the other day. The occipital condyles sit on top of this and allow you to rock your head forward and back or nod yes. The second, well, back up to the first one. I said there'd be differences. There is no body for C1. It lacks a body. Here's the spinous process. Here's the transverse process. Here's the transverse process. But the cervical vertebrae are unique in that they have a foramen in each transverse process. That's so that blood and artery and vein and nerve can go down the neck with minimum amount of danger. This is called the transverse foramen. All 7 cervical vertebrae have 2 transverse foramina. There aren't any anywhere else in the vertebral column. Here's C2. C2 is called the axis because of this protruding upward structure called the dens. It's like a thumb coming up at you. I know it's a 2-dimensional picture, but you got to imagine that the dens come up at you. When you take C1 and put it on top of C2, the dens will occupy the vacant spot where the body of C1 would have been. Okay, so you take this, you put it on this. This allows you to turn your head right and left, or to shake your head no. Here's the transverse process with the transverse foramina, or foramen singular. The same on the other side. And here's the spinous process. The vertebral foramen is here and here. These 2 cervical vertebrae are unique. The other ones, the other 5, C3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, they're a little bit more tame. They don't have dens. They don't have a missing body, okay? But they do have the transverse processes and the transverse foramina. C7. C7, if you can feel back behind your neck, feel the back of your neck and go down till you get to the bump. The bump's right above your first rib. That big bump is C7, and you will be asked to name it. It's on your sheet. It's not on this picture. It is the vertebral prominence. Vertebral prominence. The name indicates that it's the largest one. And really, when you look at a skeleton, it doesn't seem to be that much larger, but it's got so much connective tissue around it that it makes it essentially large all around. So C7 is the vertebral prominence. Here's a lumbar vertebra. Now, why did I skip to lumbar instead of thoracic? Because we did the thoracic already. The lumbar vertebra, of which there are 5, are the biggest. They have the largest protuberances. Here's the body. Superior articular process. Inferior articular process down here. And the spinous process. There's no transverse foramina, but there is a transverse foramen right here that wasn't labeled. Not transverse foramen, transverse process, I'm sorry. Okay, so body,
Charlie,
superior articular process, transverse process, inferior articular process, spinous process. And somebody have a question?
you started to answer it. I was going to say, so it has a transverse process, but not a transverse foramen.
That's correct.
Okay.
The only ones with transverse foramina are the cervical vertebra.
Okay, thank you.
Remember how many of each type there are. 7 cervical, 12 thoracic, and then 5 lumbar, and then 1 sacrum. Actually, the sacrum is a fusion of about 4 to 5 vertebrae in the embryo and the developing infant. But when they reach maturity, the fusion is so perfect that we call it 1 bone. There's 2 being shown here. Sacrum up at the top, and then the coccyx down at the bottom. The coccyx is also a fusion of 3 to 4 bones, so perfectly fused that we call it 1 vertebra. So there's 2 different types of vertebra here, the coccygeal vertebra and the sacrum. Your coccygeal vertebra does not necessarily conform to this picture and only exist in 1 piece. Because if you're like me, somewhere in your lifetime, you did the horrible thing and you sat down, or maybe fell back on your bicycle, or fell down on the fence post, and you hit your tailbone, as it's called, and it hurt like crazy, and you looked foolish. You hurt, you couldn't hardly move, and your friend was laughing at you. Well, you may have actually broken the coccyx, but it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Now the sacrum is roughly triangular. The top portion, or the superior portion, which is the widest usually, this is the base. I have a star in the middle, but that doesn't mean that the starred area is the entire base. It's put your hand all the way across, that's the base. Down at the other end is the apex. The apex. And just above the apex proper, we have a gap, and that's the sacral hiatus. Hiatus means a gap. The spinal cord does not run through this sacral canal. There is a sacral canal. In a dried bone, there's an opening up here. You can put a popsicle stick or something, pencil, all the way through. But the spinal cord doesn't run through there. Anybody know why? Your spinal cord stops at L2, lumbar vertebra 2. Your spinal cord does not go all the way down to the coccyx. Instead, it frays, and many, many nerves come down this way, but not the spinal cord itself. Well, we'll be talking about that way at the end of the semester. It's just an aside here. From the top of the base of the sacral canal, there's a ridge. Usually it's jagged, if you can see it in profile. This is the mid-sacral crest. I may be the only one left calling it mid-sacral crest because some of the books will call it sacral crest. Others will call it middle sacral crest. Others will call it median sacral crest. They're all correct. I'll use my mid-sacral crest. I think it's still the most popular. When you look at the sacrum from the posterior side, that's what we're doing. This is from the back. This is not anatomical view. These holes are so obvious. There's usually 8 of them. They're the posterior sacral foramina. Posterior sacral foramina. What goes in and out of those? The nerve fibers that I was just talking about. Up at the lateral portion of the base, here and here, this is called the ala. The ala. So come back here if we need to. Let's turn it around. This is the anterior view. This is anatomical view because it's facing you now. Across the top or across the base is this projection, smooth and rounded, called the sacral promontory. If this is too large and juts into the pelvis too far, it makes childbirth difficult. Here are our corresponding holes on this side, and they're the anterior sacral foramina. Why are we giving it another name? Just because we're looking at it from a different direction? Actually, the posterior and anterior sacral foramina are 8 separate holes on each side. You have a front plate and a back plate. Put them together and the holes match up. So these do deserve a separate name. Here's the posterior view that we just saw. And here's the ala. And if we turn it in profile like this, we're going to see the special part of the ala right here. This is the auricular surface. This is a cartilaginous surface that will articulate with the ilium of the pelvis to make the sacroiliac joint. The sacroilium, sacroiliac joint, we only have one half of it here. We have the auricular surface. Where did they get this name, auricular, anyway? Auricular means ear-like, and somebody sees an ear in there. Okay. Actually, on a real skeleton, they usually do look just like an ear.
Charlie,
Yes,
sorry, really quickly, you said it articulates with the what?
the bone we haven't done yet, the ilium,
Okay,
okay, and that's on the coxal bone.
okay,
We haven't done that either. Okay, so we do that when we get to the lower appendicular skeleton,
okay,
which would be next Tuesday. You
okay,
gotta hang on to it for then. But don't worry, I'll remind you.
okay, thank you.
Here's the ribs. Okay. When you look at the ribs and the sternum, breastbone, we can say breastbone here. We cannot say it on the test. All of this that we've been looking at so far, from the skull to right now, is part of the axial skeleton. Axial skeleton. Okay. We'll get to the appendicular skeleton in the next 2 days, the arms and the legs. There are 80 bones altogether in the axial skeleton. And when we get there, I will be telling you that there are 126 bones in the appendicular skeleton. Don't worry, you think that if there's 126 and we just did 80, this is going to be impossible. But no, the appendicular skeleton is entirely symmetrical. What we find on one side is the same as on the other side. A lot of the bones are numbered. Okay, let's look at the midline here. This is the manubrium. Below it is the sternum. In case you're wondering why that's circled, it's not on your test. That's why I took the name off. It's the sternal angle. 3 parts here. Manubrium, the shield-like portion, the body, and this little guy down here, the xiphoid process. So here they're summarized for you. The manubrium and the body attached to the ribs. Is this pink?
It's blue.
Oh, okay. I keep trying, but okay. These blue structures here are all cartilage, costal cartilage. They attach to the ribs.
Charlie, I can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you. Can you hear us?
I think his headset got disconnected. This is very unfortunate.
Okay, I found out that you weren't listening. You couldn't hear me, right?
Now we can hear you.
No.
Well, where did I leave off? And I won't bore you with it again.
Coastal cartilage.
Okay. Did I count them down?
We couldn't hear any of it. The
Okay.
last thing we heard was that coastal cartilage was attached to the ribs.
Okay. Huh. And there's, unfortunately, there's no way to flag me like we talked about earlier. So, okay, sorry about that. Here's the coastal cartilage. This is rib 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. We count the cartilages, there'll be 7. Well, then what about the rest of the ribs? 8, 9, and 10. Right down here, 8, 9, and 10. They piggyback onto number 7. By piggybacking onto number 7, I guess they get a free ride. And then there are 2 pairs of what we call floating ribs. They're numbers 11 and 12. They can be longer or shorter in some people. There's a whole bunch of rumors going around that so-and-so had their floating ribs removed. And some people have, but the removal of the ribs is usually being attributed to the wrong person. Cher did not have her ribs removed to make a tighter waist, but a few people have, guys especially. Okay, now the first 7 pairs of ribs each have their own attachment, and those are called true ribs, 1 through 7. Well, 1 through 7 means 14 ribs because there's a pair. The ones that piggyback a ride, 8, 9, and 10, are false ribs. And 11 and 12 with no attachment are floating ribs and also false ribs. There's a lot of us that don't really appreciate the breaking this up into true ribs and false ribs. I mean, if you have a structure in your body, what's false about it? But this is the way it works. Those with a direct attachment are true ribs. Those without are false ribs. Okay, and the 2 that have no attachment whatsoever are also floating ribs. I had a guy in my very first anatomy class at Saddleback. His name was Abe Sanchez. I don't remember everybody's name back that far, but I remember him. And a question I asked on a written test was, how many ribs are there in the human skeleton? And the answer, of course, is 24. And it was meant to be a gimme question. Everybody's supposed to get it right. And he answers 23. And I said, where are you getting 23, Egg? Where are you getting 23? You're the only one here that's got it, Well, then I'm the only one that reads the Bible. Oh, and here it comes. I know. He said, God took one of Adam's ribs to make Eve. So that means Adam's left with 23 ribs. And said, well, how many did Eve end up with? I don't know. It didn't say. But there's 23 in Adam. I said, well, look, if your father lost a hand and then conceived you, would you be born without a hand? And he goes, no. Well, then the descendants, from Adam don't have to be born without a rib. So he could handle that. That made sense. He was fine. Then he took the practical. He took the practical exam, 100 questions, timed test where they moved from station to station. And he ended up with a score of 4. Now, I've had less than that since. I've had less than 4, but not recently. My God, I'm expecting much higher scores than that. He came up to me with this test and got back. He said, "That was the hardest test I ever took in my life." And I said, "Well, I hope so." You know, with a score of 4, what are you going to do? He said, "I'm going to study more, and I'll be able to get this stuff." I've heard that so many times. Didn't believe it, of course, but what can you say? So he did take his next test. The next test was the muscle exam, twice as hard, twice as hard, and he got 100%. And he was the only person in the class to get 100%. So he couldn't have been getting his answers any particular way. And he got 100% on everything else for the remainder of the course. When I added up the score, he needed 1 point, which I found for him. I was not going to give him a B. Okay. Did I need to say anything else here? The xiphoid process doesn't articulate with the rib. The xiphoid process articulates with the rectus abdominis muscle for you to do either sit-ups or leg crunches. Okay. Sit-ups or crunches or lifting up your thighs. Here's a rib, not the whole rib. It extends farther to the right. Here's the head. The head goes into that first facet. Okay. Well, if you don't remember it, don't worry about it right now. Here's the head. Here's the neck, where it scrunches down a little bit. And here's the tubercle. The tubercle articulates with the facet on the transverse process of the thoracic vertebra. Okay. So it's got 2 places to hold on. One place it couldn't hold on at all. 2 places help. And then here the rib curves forward. This is the body or the shaft. And on the underside is the groove. Here's the sternum once again, manubrium, body, xiphoid process. At the top of the manubrium, you can feel it your own with your finger right in the middle, where you might imagine a tracheotomy might occur to some unlucky person. That's the jugular notch. And on either side, there's a notch for the clavicle on the right and left. This is the clavicular notch. Jugular notch, clavicular notch. You will not be asked sternal angle. There are a large number of facets along the side that you cannot see from the front here. Barely though you can see, it looks like somebody's taken a bite out of the side. And these facets are for the articulation of the costal cartilage from the rib. The rib never directly touches the sternum. If it did, you would not be able to move it. Instead, the rib ends with costal cartilage, and then that comes and touches the sternum directly if it's one of the first 7 pairs of ribs. And ribs 8, 9, and 10 will piggyback upon the costal cartilage of rib number 7. Okay. Anybody with a question left? Okay. Now, if you're wondering how he keeps track of, was I here? Very simple. I go to the Zoom attendance and immediately, match up the people that were here. But I also just take a quick look and see who's blank all day, and that hasn't been anybody. Okay, I'm happy. I just wish I could get you to be more vocal. Okay, I know it's difficult, especially you sit in a room with 30 odd people that you don't know.
Charlie,
Yep.
I have a question. The foramen is between two bones gap or just it's a between one bone?
A foramen is a hole in one bone.
In one bone,
One bone.
not two bones?
No, I said one bone.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay. I overschedule more time than we ever use, thinking someday something will happen for some reason. But I was thinking, I always ask you if you want to, you can stay behind and ask questions. But then sometimes the reason you're staying behind to ask a question is because
No.
the reason you're staying behind to ask a question is you didn't want to ask it in front of everybody else, or you had something that you needed to talk to me about. Okay, and you didn't want to do it by email, or you needed to get it out now rather than 10 o'clock tonight when I might read my email. So what we can do very easily is just like we have been doing. I invite you to exit. Okay, hang on for just a second though, and then you exit. And if you want to talk, then and you're not the last person, then you just tell me you want to talk. You go ahead and exit. Okay, I'll get deal with the last persons, and then you can rejoin because we still have time. You can just rejoin when you're the only one, which should be about 5 minutes later. Okay.
Charlotte,
Okay then.
I have a question.
Yes.
I know a lot of it is multiple choice. Will we have any pictures, diagrams where we are labeling?
Yes.
Okay.
By labeling, you'll pick a label, of
Okay.
course.
Yeah.
And it'll have a letter in front of it.
Okay.
And you hit the radio box. Okay.
Perfect.
So you don't have anything yet that I've done. Oh yes, yes you have. The Austrion, the model of the Austrion that I did today.
Okay.
I draw heavily on that one. Okay, well, have a good night for those of you who are leaving now, and see you on Thursday.
Bye, Charlie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is this the picture?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Hi, Charlie. I had a question about your emails. I'm not sure if I misheard, but did you say that you sent out an email in regards to how an outline should look? or,
I sent out an email that contained 2 turned in examples.
Mhm.
I picked them because they weren't great, they weren't bad. They were sort of middle of the road. One was handwritten and one was keyboard.
okay.
Okay, they were both adequate. So you get an idea. Did you get that?
No, I didn't. That's why I just wanted to ask. So I wasn't sure if it's because a problem on my end, or if I'm not sure why I wasn't able to receive it.
I opened it, but it said there was no content.
Did anybody see it?
I didn't receive it.
And did you see it? Oh, you didn't know.
Received it and I saw them. I can double check.
Did get them.
Yeah, I got them too.
I didn't receive it, Charlie. No, I didn't get it.
Okay, I tell you what, why don't you, if you're interested, stay there for a moment. I'm going to go back at share screen and I'll open up my email to you
Okay.
and see what I got in the sent folder. Okay. You know, you don't have to stick around, but here we are. Okay, my sent folder. Here's, see this one, example of outlines.
Yes.
Okay, that was sent on 8/27. I open it up, look at 3 attachments. First one. Okay, there's one outline.
Mm.
So it's all going to be fine at my end, but
Right.
I don't know why it isn't at yours. Did you find that email though?
I'm trying right now.
I didn't get it. I'm looking through my email. I'm wondering if it's because I was just using my Saddleback email, if it would be better to maybe transfer to a Gmail or something like that.
Me either, Charlie. I didn't get it.
Were you using Saddleback or
No.
I'm using Saddleback currently.
For me, I'm using Gmail. Yeah.
Gmail?
Yeah.
Well, okay. First off, I don't want to.
I can always forward it to someone.
Oh, awesome.
You did get it.
I
All
did
right.
get it. And I can
Okay,
forward it to
one more,
anyone.
just one more thing. One more.
Can I put my email in the chat? Thank you so much, Jessica.
Okay. Okay, can you see this small print?
Yes.
Can you find your name and tell me if I have the correct email address for you?
Yes, I found my name and it looks like it's correct, and it's my Saddleback email, so I'm not really, would it be better to provide my Gmail maybe?
I think so.
Okay.
Me too. My email is right, but I didn't get it.
Okay, if you used your Saddleback email and have another one, give it to me. I've had Saddleback email not be forwarded to me sometimes.
Okay. And I can just email that to you and then
Yes.
it'll be added. Okay.
Yeah, if you email it to me from the device you want, I can just grab it real quick and I'll
Okay.
change it here.
All right.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, we got to get that fixed, obviously.
Charlie, in the chat, it's my email. I send it to you in the chat.
Okay. You sending it to her though is something we don't want to have to do all the time. She should be able to get it straight from me. So thank you. Okay.
Thank you. I'll email the email after I get out of class. Thank you.
That's fine.
Okay.
I had a quick question, unrelated to the lectures today, but I guess I didn't submit my discussion post for the meet and greet, but I just did that today, but I had done it. I just never submitted it. So I just wanted to let you know for attendance.
Oh, yeah, I don't use that for attendance. What I do use it for is when we get to the practical exam,
Mhm.
I check to see who hasn't done it. And
I
then
know, it was my
then
mistake.
I'll warn them and tell them to get it done. Okay,
Right.
because everybody else is doing the work.
You mentioned it and I was like, oh my gosh. So then I copied and pasted what I did before and I submitted it, but I just
So
wanted
that's
to let
fine. I don't mind.
you- Okay, thank
You know,
you.
being on, if I like it when people are on time for class and we get started, you know, and we only go to 4:30 usually, just like today. That's fine. And things like that just don't bother me. Okay.
Charlie, I have a question. So when we went through articulations last week, this page,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm having trouble making sense of this grid and like how to read it and where to go. It's confusing to me, which made a lot of the questions.
Okay, if you have a highlighter, okay, or something
Yes.
like that,
I do.
highlight across the top three,
Okay.
and then the left-hand side,
Okay.
all three of those.
Okay.
It's like reading a distance map. How far from Mission Viejo to Dana Point? Then you match the two up. Okay, so where, for instance, now cartilaginous and cartilaginous and amphiarthrotic meat, it should say symphysis.
Oh, it does. Yeah.
Okay.
So across the top are,
Those are labels. Okay.
okay, so
Those are
joints are vertical.
across the top. Those are the functional characteristics.
Okay.
And then down the left hand side are the structural characteristics.
Okay.
Then you match, pick a match. Structural.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So if I was looking at synth arthrotic and fibrous, examples would be sutures and gymphosis. So like,
yes,
okay.
no, yes, the answer is yes.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. So functional characteristics across the top and then down on the side, you said they were.
Yeah. See, now that gives me something to check with on Thursday if everybody else got it. I've never had anybody ask me about it before.
Okay.
But that's okay.
Okay. That makes more sense. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I'll just study it a bit.
Okay.
Charlie, I have a question. I have to study from the book too as well, or the lecture notes it's enough are enough.
If you study only the lecture notes, you'll do quite well. If you know them, the book is supposed to help you. There will be 5 out of 100 questions, though, coming from the book that were never covered in the lecture notes. Okay.
Okay.
And there's no way that you can avoid reading the book
Mhm.
if you have to do the outline. So the outline's my way to be sure that you read the book, and you know, you don't have to spend forever on it, but I think it helps. I think it helps a lot.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, but I'm confused a little bit in the book because it's, I don't know where this section or where which chapter the I'm confused in the book a little bit, so it's
Well, I
okay.
went over the sections for one. I went over most of them for chapter 6. Then I
Mhm.
provided you with 2 outlines so that you could see what you should be going over. I haven't done it yet for 9.
Okay.
Okay, I will do it for 9 on Thursday.
Okay, and we didn't cover the chapter 7, right? No, chapter
No.
7 for the lab, right?
Chapter 7, we're using the book for lab guide.
Yeah.
Okay, if you have it, you can follow along with those figure numbers. Okay, to read it, I don't think is as useful as to use it and follow.
Okay, so far we have chapter 1, 6, and 7 for lab, right?
No, 1, 6, and 9.
1, 6, and 9. And 7 for lab, right? Or no?
7 we use in lab. We use it, but we
Yeah.
don't do an outline. No.
Okay.
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 You use it mainly to look at the pictures.
Mm.
Well, you can look at my pictures too. Okay.
Okay. I got it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Okay, this is my last question.
Okay.
We were going over all of these today, and you were saying to remember the numbers of like lumbar vertebrae. You said there's 5, right?
Right.
Okay. And then the C1 and C2, we talked just about the 2 vertebrae. Those are just the 2 vertebrae underneath the skull. But we talked about C7 also.
Well, and I mentioned that there are 7 cervical vertebrae.
7.
There are 7. We
Okay.
only looked at 1 and 2.
Oh, yeah.
And we
And so-
mentioned 7
All
because
7.
they all actually pretty much the same, except
Okay.
for 1 and 2.
7 vertebra have 2 transverse foramen. No other vertebra have them. And then I'm just wondering if I missed any numbers. There was the page with the sternum.
Yeah.
And then there was this page.
Yep.
On this page, the T6 vertebra, was I supposed to write a number down on this?
That was the first page for today. I don't know why you write a number.
Okay. Okay. I think I got everything written down.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay.
I'll see you Thursday.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey Charlie, so I'm Carissa. I emailed you.
I
earlier
know.
today. Yeah. So I joined during the break. It might be like TMI. I had an ID put in because
I
get
don't
these
need to
really-
know.
Yeah, okay. So I had like issues going on. I'm still not like 100%, but they said everything from like a medical standpoint is fine. So yeah, so at least that. But I joined late, but I got to see the second half, so I'm gonna rewatch the
You'll be fine.
first half. Okay, cool. Thank you.
No. Okay.
Charlie,
Yes.
I have last question. For exam, for the lab, first one, we will, we have to study only the lab, right? Not the lectures.
The first test is only lab.
Okay.
Yes. However, you'd be it would be a mistake not to be studying the lecture as you go along. You need to be looking at the lecture too, because otherwise you'll be putting it all on the night before. So,
Okay.
but the first test is only on the bones.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Charlie.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Bye bye.
You too.